Hi, it's Deborah Hamilton, and this is the last podcast for the year 2020, which we all may cheer about, on not why do pets matter, but the MAAP plan, how to make a plan for your pets so they're cared for. And I have my stalwart companions here, Rose, Sally, and Connie, who've been here with me since we started this really in March, when all of us were worried about what would happen to our pets if COVID struck our home. And at the time, I guess most of us thought this might be a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week thing, because none of us lived in 1918 when the last pandemic, I'm old enough to almost be there, but I wasn't. And we didn't know exactly what they meant when they said pandemic. And now after these 9 months, we have come to the end understanding that we are not out of the woods yet. We actually have a new strain that just got here from Colorado that's easier to catch, which is almost unbelievable because I think the other one's pretty easy to catch as well. And today we almost had 4,000 people expire because of COVID. The largest day of transitions for people from human to angel form. And I'm trying to do it in a way that's more uplifting because 2020 has been such a non-uplifting year that we're going to talk about the gratitude we have to our animals for keeping us safe today. But before I start, I just want to remember everyone why we call this the MAAP program, because it means make a plan. It means address the needs of your pet. It means appoint caregivers, and only one can be a family member. And publish. Every plan you make for your pet needs to be published with the caregivers, with your attorney, with your veterinarian, with your family. And if you live in a home with a pet, that means an apartment, a house, wherever you are, in a car, in a motorhome, have documents readily available for people to call people if something happens to you. Because if you're on the road or you're alone in the house and no one knows how to get in touch with your appointed people, they won't. So we all need to know that we need something up there to tell us what to do if something happens to your pets. So before I talk any more about this, because I know we're going to weave it in, I'm going to ask Connie how her week has been. I know she's probably staying in because the holiday season was pretty tricky, and we all stayed in. Sorry, I'll do this. Is it there? Oh no, I put it over there. I usually stick my mask in my bra. Sorry, everyone, but I keep it there so that it's always at the ready. Oh, here it is. It's always at the ready. So sorry about that. So I'm always ready to pop my mask on. And I must say, in North Carolina, masks are required, yet it seems they're optional. So people do come to your house to offer to do work. And as most of you know, we're moving to North Carolina. We have workmen coming, and most of them come without masks. And so Jim and I stand 12 feet away and wear a mask. And Drew my oldest son has been wonderful about wearing a mask. Thomas has been wonderful about wearing a mask because, of course, both of them came from out of state. Drew is now 18 days in resident here in North Carolina, so we think he's okay, and he tested negative, but we didn't want to rely on that. Thomas tested negative, so we know he is clear unless he picked it up on his way from Florida. Jim and I tested negative, and so we're clear unless we picked it up driving down from New York. And since I am over 21, I do have to stop and use the facilities at least once on an 11-hour drive. I don't care, but I need to. So we were very good about doing a lot of disinfecting and mask wearing. Not perfect, but better. So Connie, tell us what you were up to.
Well, of course, I am in ground zero in Los Angeles County. We are absolutely the hot spot for the entire United States and then some. And again, please tell Drew that he is safer with mom and dad and his brother than he is at home here in North Hollywood.
He's pretty glad he's here.
Yes. We are really at 0% ICU bed occupancy all throughout Southern California. They usually say you're at 0%, but then they have some in reserve. The reserve beds are gone. Ambulances are now circling 12 hours trying to find an emergency room to take their patient who is gasping for air in the back of the ambulance into the hospital. And we are running out of oxygen because it's being used up so fast. So some of the major medical centers have already declared internal disaster plans, if you can believe.
God. Oh my
So,
God.
and we have some of the best medical centers in the country here. You know, UCLA, Cedars-Sinai, USC, LA County, and it is just really, really awful. And last night I found out that it really hit close to home in my soft-coated Wheaten Terrier community. In fact, a very dear friend who actually whelped my almost 11-year-old Bammy and her siblings in March of 2010, and I have shown with her for years. And she had a young pup a month older than Bammy, so we have followed each other through 3 generations now of dog showing. And she, my best friend, who lives out in the Palm Springs area with this other friend, called me last night to tell me that our other friend tested positive for COVID.
It
And
is.
she had just brought her husband home from a subacute skilled nursing facility after his hospitalization for, they think, pancreatic cancer he's going into. And she wanted to get him out of any kind of a sniff for obvious reasons because of the danger of COVID. And the only thing that all of us can try to figure out is that she caught it during the transport process during one of the healthcare or from one of the healthcare workers. And she is in the biotech industry herself as an executive. So she is mildly symptomatic. The problem is nobody's there except for her to care for her husband. And she has 2, possibly 3 Wheatens. I don't know if the one who's as old as my Bammy is still alive, but she certainly has at least 2. So, in fact, I was on the phone this morning with my BFF saying, is there a plan for the dogs? Because thinking of what we all do here,
Right.
that was the first thing when I actually reached consciousness this morning. As I was fixing the dogs' breakfast, I thought, oh my God, what about Catherine's dogs? Who's going to take care of them? So my friend Bonnie was going to reach out to her today and see about making a plan if she has to go to the hospital, what to do about Bill, her husband, and what to do about the dogs.
Yeah, because whoever comes in to take care of Bill needs to be a skilled nursing person, and probably would not want to take care of the dogs as well, unless that's something you've set up before. It really is so vitally important. And I know now with people getting sick and people having prolonged sickness, there's, what do they call it? The COVID linger or something,
Yeah.
where you stay in the funk and really can't do much of anything. And you might actually still need help taking care of your pets once you return home because of this prolonged malaise that you live in. So I'm going to tuck her in my prayers because my husband's uncle just passed away. A home health care worker gave him COVID, and he had Alzheimer's, and he succumbed to COVID. So he was older, and he had a few, how they say, they die of something else. They don't die of COVID. Well, no, they really die of COVID because COVID kicks everything into the toilet, so to speak, because you're living a balanced life, and then all of a sudden something tips the scale, and that's COVID, and then you pass away. So he passed away, and of course, Connie, you told me about the person whose Labrador was homeless because he got sick. And what do? People put it on the internet. And that's really great if you have, like Connie and I do, and Sally is, of course, a part of it as well, being my friend, the Irish setter, the Wheaten Terrier world, and we come to the aid of our countrymen. But if we don't keep in touch with our puppy owners, and they don't know to call us, those puppies might end up in a shelter. And those puppies might not survive, even though they might be as old as Bammy, right? You don't know if the older dog is alive, and you certainly don't want Bammy going to a shelter on any day of the week, but definitely not at this age. And I know Sally has 2 older dogs, and she wouldn't want either of them going to a shelter if, God forbid, something happened to she or Gordon. So it really is important and imperative to leave that note up on the fridge, or leave that note in your car, or tell people and have people understand they're the caregivers. because the pets really, they aren't going to thrive if you're not there. And if you come home, you also might need to have them cared for. The other piece that's really interesting, Connie, is that a lot of people won't take a dog from a COVID positive household, even though it has not been proven that you can catch COVID from a dog. A dog can catch COVID from you, but you cannot catch COVID from a dog. However, that's not, so my thought is, well, because I'm crazy and we all have established that over the months that we've been together, I would just take the dog home and bathe it. I would wear gloves, I would wear a mask, take the dog home, bathe it, change my clothes, and then be done, because that's going to be enough. That's going to be enough to assuage any fear that the dog is going to bring COVID with them.
Well, just to illustrate exactly what you're saying about the fears of people taking the dogs, my friend Bonnie, my BFF, is the rescue chair for the Southern California Wheaton Club, and she's reluctant to go near that house, to go near the dogs. And so we were trying to brainstorm, well, what if Catherine calls her vet practice? Can one of the techs come and pick up the dogs and temporarily board them there? And, we were going through a whole bunch of different scenarios of what to do. And not only has our local Wheaton Rescue shut down, but our national Wheaton Rescue is suspended. Because
so then if they're your fail-safe, you've lost one leg of your three-legged stool.
Well, we've lost two.
Yeah.
We've lost local and national. So, there you go.
It's really frightening. And I know that Sally has been, really working on making sure she has people in place, because I'm here. And if God forbid something happens to her or to Gordon, she's going to need someone. And how's that going for you, Sally?
Well, I'm kind of in tune with this, Deborah, because as you know, my husband and I were expats for 4 years in Seoul, Korea. And we took an Irish setter to Seoul with us. And our concern was, what happened? They said, now there's an evacuation process. If something happens, you and your husband go here to the Busan Air Force Base and you will be evacuated. And I said, and our dog? And they go, no dogs can go. And I said, well, yes, our dog will go. And they said, no dogs will go. And so before there was a MAAP plan, I went to our neighbors across the apartment from us, this other apartment, and I gave them a large envelope of money. And I said, please just here's the key, come to our apartment. Please take care of our dog. We will come back for the dog. If we have to go and we're just gone, please take care of our dog. Here's what she eats. And they knew, because they would walk her once a day while we were both at work. But you have to think so out of the box.
You do.
And so you just don't, as Connie's talking about now, and we were a couple of years ago living in Seoul with a huge Irish setter, which is unheard of. That's like living with a pony in your apartment there. And it's like, well, what do you do with the dog? The dog can't be evacuated. So it's a whole process, and making the MAAP plan is so important, because you think, okay, this is good for today, but as you say, and then COVID happens, or who knows what. And it's like, oh my goodness, now what? And one of my people on my list, now she's a possible COVID, and I've said, well, what about my dog? And she said, I suggest this person or this person. I go, well, I don't like them. My dog is not going to go to that person or that person. So let's rethink this. So again, I'm rethinking it this week. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm hopeful she has a sinus infection, but you really have to make a big umbrella.
Yeah, you have to draw a really big circle. It happened during Hurricane Katrina. It happened again during Superstorm Sandy, when people had to evacuate and they didn't realize Superstorm Sandy actually benefited from Hurricane Katrina, because by then everyone realized that people wouldn't evacuate without their animals. And so the federal government and state governments and the Red Cross actually made plans for allowing certain number of dogs in evacuations. But if you're not first to evacuate, which of course I say to people all the time, I don't care if the water is, or the fire is 100 miles from you. Don't wait to the last minute, because those 5 spots at the rescue place, at the evacuation place, may be filled with somebody with a dog. You've got to make sure. And they say to me, you're really a worrywart. And I go, I am. Because just what you said, Sally, which was perfect. I don't want these 3 people to get my dogs. And if I don't want those 3 people to get my dogs and they're the closest to me, I have to make a plan. And I might have to have one of those 3 people hold my dog in the interim while a longer term person can get to me. But, you really have to be aware of what's necessary for the dog, and sometimes put our egos aside, which I have a huge one when it comes to my dogs, but sometimes put our egos aside so that our dogs can be in a safe environment until the person we want them to be cared for shows up. But like Connie said, now the rescues are breed specific rescues, and probably even shelters and rescues all over are cutting back or shutting down now because of the spike in COVID. And if you get it, what do? I mean, the neighbors, it is sort of very interesting to me, because I, of course, think I just will put on a hazmat suit of something, probably 2 garbage bags taped together, and gloves and a mask, and go in and get the dog, bathe it, and then, wash my clothes, take the bags off and stuff. I know that my vet actually had her 2 sons see their older friends who they hadn't seen in over a year in garbage bags. She taped them into garbage bags, and Ren, Sally, so she's crazy like me. She taped her sons into garbage bags, and, they had masks on, and they had full face coverings, and their hands were in long gloves. They had plastic bags on their bodies, and they could see these 2 women because they're like their grandmother. And so they were after a year, heartbroken. And she said, fine. They all took showers. They all got bagged up. But we can think about these things, and the rescues might want to think about these things, and also want to reach out to people who may not be involved in rescue now, because it tends to be those over 40 or 50 who man the rescue world. And they're a little more susceptible to underlying issues that would be exacerbated by COVID. Maybe we need to reach out to the younger people and say, at least during this period, all we want you to do is transit the dog. Just transit the dog. Pick the dog up, bathe the dog. We'll take it from there, because that at least breaks the chain of COVID. And I know everybody worries about, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and never wanting anyone to be in a bad situation. We've been here in North Carolina. We had our friends down, and it was hard for me, but I said, I need you guys to take a COVID test before you come down, and I need it to be negative. I said, I know that doesn't prove that you're not bringing stuff with you, but it's the best I can do, and we're all going to wear masks, and we're all going to sit 6 feet apart. And we did. And it was lovely to be with 2 extra people, plus my son from Florida, who is also, a walking petri dish. But we all sat 6 feet apart. And this is going to help us with our pets, stay with our pets, stay healthy, and make sure that we don't need to put forward the plans we have in place. But if you don't have the plans in place and something happens, then the animals are the ones who are going to suffer. Because as Connie pointed out to me during the week, a Labrador Retriever who was a field Labrador, I think, his owner died. His owner died, and he was looking for a home. And he was going to go to the shelter. And it's not that shelters aren't great places. They're great places. However, if you can plan for the next step your dog takes, that's why it's the MAAP plan, navigating the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it short-term or long-term. You want to have them have a place to land softly. There are great people who adopt dogs from shelters. I'm not saying that isn't one way to go, but it really should be your final resort after everything else is exhausted. And if you don't take the time, like Connie said, they're talking through rescue. They're trying to figure out how to do this. As Sally said, she's looking outside the box because she's already done this in Korea as an expat. So there's got to be a way to figure this out. But it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes ingenuity, and it takes the courage and vulnerability to call somebody and say, will you take care of my dog? And when they say no, A, don't get mad at them. And B, go to the next person on the list or ask your neighbor who you've never spoken to about the dogs. Because sometimes, like Sally just said, her neighbor actually was taking her dog out in Korea, but maybe she never had that need until she had to be airlifted out. And so possibly, I mean, I know my neighbor in Pleasantville, I never asked him a thing. And he said, if you're ever away, I'd love to take care of the dog. I went, really? And I didn't put a card in his mailbox because he doesn't have a dog. So why would I put a card in his mailbox? So that's why you should put cards in everybody's mailbox, not like I say, just in the ones with the dogs, but in everybody's mailbox, because there are people who are, not able to take care of a dog long-term, but could cover you for the days that you are not able to take care of your pets. So how did you guys celebrate Christmas? Did you, and I know you both did, and other people celebrate Hanukkah, and I just learned so much about Kwanzaa from a colleague of mine. Today is actually Purpose Day, where you try to figure out what your purpose is. And she said it's like this wonderful day of the week, because it's a week-long holiday, where you learn and you explore your purpose. So how are your holidays, guys? Good?
Quiet.
Ours,
How about you?
Very quiet.
Very, very quiet. So were ours. Our Christmas was very quiet, and we had lovely breakfast, lovely dinner, and my friend actually showed up just in time for dinner. So it was great. How about you, Sally?
well, I didn't realize it, but we dropped a few of the new toys on our walk. I now have 2 dogs that walk with a toy in their mouth, and they had dropped them. And 2 neighbors came by and said, we just wanted to let you know we threw 2 toys. There's a pig and a lamb in your yard, and we found them along the roadside. We thought they might be from your house. I said, thank you.
Yeah. That would be, the lamb would be Athena, and the piggy would be Roxy.
That's right.
Yes, I knew that because, I know the preferences. It's interesting. We actually had our neighbor drop off cookies here, and she's 87. Everybody on this block, you have to be 80 or over. So they're sort of looking at us as troublemakers, big partiers and troublemakers on this block. Although I think there's a newer neighbor down the road that I might introduce myself to before I go. But it was interesting. She dropped off cookies, and my son was here, and he, I said hello, and he was wearing his mask, and she had her mask on when she arrived. But then the minute she walked in the house, it's like taking your hat off, right? She took her mask off, and she was like, okay, I'm just going to step back and I'm just going to let you. And she's, talking to him and very friendly. And she has a 96-year-old husband who I think is bedridden. And they're right next door. So it's very nice of her to make the effort, especially during COVID, to have people come over. And I know we all miss people. And I know we're all doing a lot of Zooms. I don't know, Connie, if you did Zooms with your, extended family and your extended friends. I know I did. We did it with Jim's family. We didn't do it with my sister. She was down in Florida, so we didn't have a chance to do that. But, it's what we have to do now. And it's 2020. I don't know about you, but I'm going to get really drunk for New Year's Eve. I'm just going to drink the whole bottle of champagne, say adios, amigo, and whatever falls in 21 has got to be better. How do you guys feel?
Oh, absolutely. Just counting down. And as somebody said, this will be a year when this year will be 2020 in our rearview mirror.
Yeah.
So we're all looking very forward to that. That's for sure. How
about you, Sally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We just can't wait to get to the other side.
I know. So the last thing I wanted to do before we go, because we have 5 more minutes, is I wanted to ask you what you thought was the best thing about 2020, and then a microcosm is, what's the best thing you learned about being here in this group since March? So first is, what's the one thing you're most grateful for in 2020? And then what makes you grateful for being here with this group? Because I know what I'll go last. Sally.
Well, I got to spend more time with the dogs, so that was just a win-win, and we've fallen even more in love. And I think just learning about the MAAP plan and making plans for the dogs and any other pets, fish, horse, whatever. I've expressed that in walking with all the new people I've met, because there's so many new people walking now in our neighborhood. Just make a plan for your pet, because like my number one person is Audrey, and Audrey's being tested for COVID. She's been tested for COVID. She thinks she has a sinus infection, but the doctor won't see her until she has a negative COVID test. And I'm like, well, you're right. So I've just realized I've got to really, like I say, as you said, broaden the circle. And I'm just trying to get that message out to people that you can't just, leave your pet like, yeah, we're fine. Everything's going to be good, because things happen. So, yeah.
And not just COVID. Look at Jim and I. I mean, one breaks his shoulder, the other sprains her ankle. So it's not, not just COVID.
Yeah. So I've learned a great deal, from every session that we've had. So, and I'm sure that Connie has also.
So Connie, what are you grateful for, and what are you grateful for?
Well, I am very grateful to have made it through this year with my 3 dogs in one piece. That's number one. And my entire family. My brother-in-law had a mild case of COVID back in March. And my sister is a pathology professor at Johns Hopkins. So that was the irony of ironies. So I'm very grateful for health and well-being, and that above all. The other thing I'm grateful for is, even though we have been out of the show ring, we learned a whole new way of trialing in Raleigh, and it's the AKC virtual program. And in fact, many, if not most, of my Obedience Club members, fellow members, and I have titled in Raleigh. And next year, they're going to be offering obedience and expanding agility and trick dog and some of the other titling opportunities. So we got very inventive with training. We all trained masked and socially distanced until the parks all shut down, I guess about October, November, when things really started getting bad. But we were able to get all our filming in right under the wire. And I put a Raleigh intermediate title on my girl Patsy and a Raleigh novice on her son. And as I said, many of my friends have been able to do the same thing. So we were very grateful for that. And I'm also very grateful for all the kennel clubs in the state of California that had the wisdom and the good sense to shut down all shows throughout the state. Because, as you know, a lot of states back east where you all are have been going. And by the way, I don't know, Deborah, if you heard, but one of the judges who tested positive, in fact, that one report of the judge on an airplane from Orlando that people were confusing with the man who died of a COVID-related heart attack on his way to LAX here, those were actually 2 different cases. The judge who passed out on her flight from Orlando died.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I heard that from another Wheaton breeder judge friend of mine in Northern California. She texted me last night. Very well-known judge. I don't want to mention any names here, but her daughter is also a judge.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that was directly from the AKC judges seminar in Orlando during the ANC.
Yep. And your thoughts about being here for the last 9 months? At least you had a reason to stay sane.
Absolutely. Stay sane. And I hate to say this is not the only Zoom I'm doing. I've been doing a lot of Zooming, as we all have. But I have also been grateful for that technology too.
Yeah.
For not only keeping all of us connected, but also all my other friends and colleagues. So
it really was important to learn how to do this and really do it well.
Very, very well. The beginnings of it had teleconferencing and web conferencing had started before I retired from aerospace, but it's really gotten sophisticated, and it's just wonderful, because otherwise, what would we have all done?
Well, it's interesting because I used to do all of my mediations via Zoom because I didn't have a brick and mortar office, and it just made sense to me because they could have a dog in Arizona and another dog in California, and I wouldn't have to fly somewhere in between to help them. I just do it this way. So I've been doing this since 2015. So I'm grateful that the practice that I started has really taken off, because people recognize that you can resolve conflicts via Zoom if you really have someone there who's holding a safe space. And I'm so grateful for this group because it got the word out. I mean, Sally's talking to people on her walk. You're talking to people in the Wheaton community. It's going to tip. It's interesting to see how people absolutely recognize everything you say is important and brilliant and still choose not to do anything. It just, it makes me worried. In fact, I just got a call from a woman who came here on this talk 2 or 3 times, Melissa Savage, and she just had her attorney call me because she's writing up her MAP plan, and she goes, well, what about what happens to the dog when I die? And I said, well, that's sort of the way everything runs. If you're doing your will with someone, that's the natural transition. It goes to the caregivers, and then the caregivers usually are the people it's going to stay with for the rest of its life. But if it isn't, if they're just, short-term caregivers because you're sick, well, then that's a whole different can of worms. And if it's a long-term caregiver, well, then you have to talk about that. That's why when I give the program in February for 2 days, it'll be like 3 hours a day. Everybody will understand each little innuendo so they can take it to their attorneys. That's the most important piece, is having your attorney understand that this is what they want to know and do. I'm actually giving a talk on this at the annual meeting for the New York State Bar Association, Pets and Emergencies. And we're going to talk about what you have to do and be planning for, because we don't know when the fire is going to shift, when the COVID's going to come, when the floods are going to come, when the ice storm's going to come, and the electricity is going to be out, and you have fish. I mean, hello, you have fish. You need a generator. I'm telling you, you can't go run, get a generator once the electricity goes out and the fish start going belly up. Not going to help. So, we've been through that because we have had fish, we have had turtles, we have had lizards. So I'm there with the reptilian group. I'm there with the dog and cat group. We now have Jane down here, and we're making sure that the door is closed. We put pictures of her on all the doors outside saying, shut this door because this cat with a cute picture of her face could get out. And we don't want that to happen. So without further ado, I'm so grateful you guys are here tonight. Rose, I'm so grateful you're here too. And if you want to chime in on how you made it through and everything, you're more than welcome. I know I always leave you out, but that's because you tell me to.
I love you guys. It's amazing the amount of stuff that I have learned from all of you. And it's just a blessing to be around people that are forward thinking and positive, and just really haven't gotten sucked into all the social media craziness. So thank you very much for being uplifting, bright spirits. I appreciate that beyond belief.
Oh, well, we're so glad, Rose. You're so sweet. You put this all together for me every week, so I'm so grateful. And without further ado, guys, have a very happy and healthy new year. I'm so grateful, and this program will continue. I just recognized, I put something up on Facebook that I started the first one of these in 2013 or 2014, right after I broke my ankle. So it was start, and then COVID came. So now I think that this will definitely, flourish. And with the help of everyone like you but like Sally and Connie sharing with their friends, the Wheaton Terrier people. I mean, I just got a call from somebody who was at my Kerry, I think it was the Kerry Blues who had me. I know the Nova Scotia duck tolling retrievers had me. They keep calling. In fact, Melissa Savage is a duck tolling retriever person. And, it will happen, especially as people recognize that what happened to us this year is not going to be an anomaly, unfortunately. It's not. I mean, I don't think we'll have another pandemic, God willing, and the creek don't rise. But people are going to get sick, and we need to do something about it. So this is Deborah Hamilton. I'm so glad you're here for the MAP plan. Please call me if you need me. Join me on the Why Do Pets Matter podcast that will be starting again in January. You all have a great evening, a great and happy new year. And I'll see you all next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.